Hello, everyone, and welcome back to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast and view. As always, from deep within the Outer Rim, my name is John Mark Tully, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host.
Almost botched that one. I'm Garrett K. Jones.
And I don't know how this is working down. On my thing, he's down there. Brian is down there.
Hello, I'm Brian Karasik. Thanks for tuning in, gang. Good to be back.
Oh, man. Oh, how do you guys celebrate your...
everyone?
Okay, I'll try that again.
Memorial Day?
Yeah, Memorial Day.
I did absolutely jack and squat.
Nice.
We cleaned the house a little bit, and that was it. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. We just stayed and watched TV and played video games and vegged out. That was about it.
What about you, Brian?
Well, not to start the show off on a down note, but I am a veteran with friends who are dead. So I spent Memorial Day in memory of them. I'm an officer of the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post. I stand up, I do the donation thing on the day of, and give out the red poppies, and I sang the national anthem at our flag raising ceremony. So I will say none of my fallen brethren fell in combat. They died to sepsis, cancer, emphysema, and a bee sting. So it's not like we're not talking. Yeah, this guy I served with for 4 years in Japan. Every time if a bee showed up, he would, he's going to kill me, get him away from me. And he was not kidding. Get an EpiPen, Johnson. Come on now. But anyway, no, it's an important day to me, and I am old enough and served long enough ago that I have brothers in arms who perished due to natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, of course, we always
causes then more. But
yeah. All of my time in service was largely peaceable. The closest I ever came to combat was when I almost got in a fight with the Marine for making fun of his tattoo, which is inadvisable.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do much of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did do.
Anyway,
I tried writing and ended up doing the thing that all writers do is procrastinate by working on my website. So
that's a form of writing.
Sure. We'll go with that. So anyway,
we are here to talk about probably the only subject in the entire Star Wars fandom that is more controversial than the sequel trilogies. It is, of course, as we mentioned before, the concept of the Gray Jedi. And Brian, I know you have a lot to say about this, so this could be interesting. This could be an interesting topic because, yeah.
Before we jump into the debate of the Gray Jedi and how they fit within the scope of canon and all that, let's give kind of a brief history. For those of you tuning in on video, I'm going to be bringing up the Gray Jedi on Wikipedia. So the information that I've got here, and I don't know how often this has been changed or adapted based on what's available in canon, but the date established is 3995 BBY. So almost 4 millennia before the Battle of Yavin. So that's a long time to be around. And so the history, honestly, to be honest, I don't know much about the history. I mean, you guys could fill me in on it. I think the gray are just a nice little middle ground between the dark side and the light. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to kind of, set what we're talking about when we say Gray Jedi, because, I mean, are we talking about a Force user that uses both the light and dark side of the Force, or are we talking about someone who does not necessarily follow the rules and the dogma of the Jedi or the Sith?
Under traits and techniques, the second paragraph says that Gray Jedi display the use of both light and dark side Force abilities and demonstrated skill with techniques common to Jedi and Sith. Yeah. So I think that kind of helps us answer that question. So,
Yeah.
So thoughts?
If I may,
Yeah.
Go.
I come to this topic with some emotionality attached to it, more than is healthy, really. And so, in the spirit of maintaining respect for you gentlemen and for our audience, I would like to preface what I'm about to say by saying this is my opinion. I do not think it is objective fact. That I feel this way does not mean I am better or smarter in any way than anyone who may disagree with me. However, I feel that somewhere in some 8th grade math class, someone decided they wanted to be a Jedi because Jedi are cool. But they also wanted to use the dark side because the dark side's cool. How do we do both? It is, to me, the summation. It's the pinnacle of Kirk/Spock fan fiction brought into Star Wars. I'm frustrated whenever I have this conversation, and less so of late, but whenever I have this conversation with fans, I have been told condescendingly and at some volume that the following people are or could be considered Gray Jedi: Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Asajj Ventress, Ahsoka Tano, Mace Windu, Anakin Skywalker, Baylan Skoll, Set Hearth, and Darth Zena. Gentlemen, what do all these characters have in common? The Force, that's it. And to me, it seems nobody can actually decide, even that Wikipedia article can't decide whether a Gray Jedi is someone who uses the dark side and the light, or someone who just doesn't really agree with the council. It could apply to absolutely anybody. And I will truncate my usual rant to say this. I do not believe that it has been established that the dark side is a tool that can be used for good or for ill. The analogy I use is the dark side is not like a gun where you could use a gun to rob a bank or to defend your home from a home invasion. And if we carry that analogy further, if the dark side were a gun that you could use for either of those two things, the dark side is a gun that knows the bank guard's schedule. The gun wants you to rob the bank. The gun, in fact, will tell you on a regular basis that the people who have their money in that bank don't deserve it any more than you do, and certainly many of them less. The gun
so it was made by Apple.
Yeah, yes. The gun will tell you that, in fact, if you had the money in that bank, you wouldn't need to live in such a bad neighborhood that you're worried about a home invasion. And the gun will keep at it and tell you that you are a bad father because you cannot defend your home well enough. You can't provide for your family well enough that you can live in a place that you don't need to worry about a home invasion. Finally, when you do suffer a home invasion and use that gun will misfire and injure your child. And now you are paying for hospital bills for your critically paralyzed child that you shot. And all the while now the gun is telling you other ways you can save money and put your child's suffering to an end. It's not a tool that you can use for good. You can't shake the head devil's hand and say you're only kidding. This is the idea that a Jedi could or would use the dark side is, to me, something that a Sith would say. Imagine Sidious encouraging Anakin, you can use the dark side. It's fine. Why don't you use the dark side? Get started, build up a good power base. And then, don't forget to come back and do a bunch of good stuff to offset it, right? You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You can use the dark side without any consequences. It doesn't jibe with what we know to be the case of using the dark side. Even as far as Darth Revan, those who serve the dark side, who use the dark side are bound to serve it. Darth Revan, Yoda, Sidious, they all express strongly held beliefs that the Force is not something that has a middle ground. And if we look at two major canon characters in new canon, who I think most reflect the concept of a Gray Jedi, as it were, are the Bendu, who nearly killed Kanan Jarrus just for the sake of balance, and DJ from The Last Jedi. It's not a commendable approach. I mean, Star Wars. I don't think Star Wars is a story that has a lot of gray area.
Wait, who is DJ?
He was
Benicio del Toro's character from The Last Jedi.
the slicer.
Right, the guy who sold to good and bad, and then sold out. Sold out the resistance.
Okay, you mentioned her earlier. What about a character like Asajj Ventress? Because I think like because she doesn't seem like, at least when last time we see her in Bad Batch, it doesn't seem like she's fully gone over to the light side yet. Like she's not completely, but yet she still doesn't seem like she's completely like she's in. Maybe we can look at Gray as something that is when it's someone moving from one to another, particularly someone going from the dark into the light. They're not quite sure where they fit in, and maybe it's a word usage.
Exactly. Why do we need the nomenclature Jedi?
Because
Jedi is a very specific word that has a definition.
Right.
And applying all the
case,
concepts of Gray to that definition negate the meaning of the word. A Jedi is someone who doesn't use the dark side. So
then should we also negate the term Dark Jedi?
I do think so, yes. I don't care for it.
Because if we're going to use that, then again, a Sith is something that is very specific too.
Yeah.
I'd say it's even more specific than a Jedi. Now you can look
and there's only one Sith that ever used the light side, and he destroyed almost half of the Sith artifacts he collected and was killed by his master, Darth Gravid, I think.
But at the same, I don't remember.
Darth Gravid, which means also bearing eggs. Why do they call him that?
Yeah, you can also look. Maybe you could also take the term Jedi as being a. I don't know. What would this be in canon, but as a catch-all term, where someone just said they see someone with a lightsaber that's not red. That's like, oh, Jedi. They see someone using the Force, they automatically think, oh, Jedi. Even though we know from canon there are, you have, like you said, the Bendu, the Guardians of the Wills, the Night Sisters. Mm-hmm. We have all of these different, and the Night Sisters are a good example of
dark side users who
haven't been consumed by the dark side. Like they don't seem like they're able to harness the dark side without. That's the thing with the Sith is the Sith eventually become consumed, but the Night Sisters seem to be able to use that harness dark side power. And honestly, Mace Windu to some extent with his Vapad style is able to skirt that dark side without going over to it. He's able to harness that and use it against his opponents.
I would argue that his use of Vapad is what made him susceptible to what ultimately killed him.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And I could fill a whole podcast with why Palpatine, how Palpatine engineered that fight to take place, but but there's absolutely room within canon for characters to get it wrong, as in see someone wielding a lightsaber doing something bad and say, Gray Jedi. But Set Hearth is not a Jedi.
Right.
Set Hearth is not a member of the Jedi Order who is ostensibly with the understanding and approval of the Jedi Council using dark side powers. And to assert that there are members of that order who are willingly and with permission doing so is to just get it wrong from outside of the universe. And we, as an audience, should know better than to think that happens.
So then that begs a question, Brian. How do we apply that logic to someone like Mace Windu, who walked that fine line? We're talking about a guy whose lightsaber literally is the embodiment of the blend between a Jedi Guardian and a Sith, blue and red combined to purple, which I know that Samuel L. Jackson just wanted a purple lightsaber because it looked
but
cool.
No, I like it. I like the application of the red and blue.
If you go through the Dark Horse Clone Wars books, he talks about how he developed the Vapad lightsaber form, which takes a user dangerously close to crossing into dark side territory. And the fact that the council allowed him and gave him permission to develop that form and to teach it, I think.
To whom did he teach it?
I think, as far as I know, he was one of the persons
Let me grab my book.
who learned it. And I think he went to the dark side. I think there's a specific reason why Windu is the only one, because he knows how dangerous it is.
That's how I would answer you, Garrett. Is Mace Windu is, I believe, the second most senior Jedi in the Council at the time of the prequel trilogy.
Yeah. It was him and Yoda kind of went back and forth between
For
who was Grandmaster.
For Mace Windu to have allowances made for his mastery of the Force, his control of his emotions, is quite a far cry from saying that there's an entire club doing it.
Yeah.
I made a meme years ago that's my Sith alter ego. The only thing I wrote in 8th grade that I still like is Darth Korosis, and it's the meme is Darth Korosis's Guide to the Gray Jedi, and it's just nothing but patronizing. Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead. Yeah, sure, because anybody south of Mace Windu, I think, who dabbles enough in the dark side to be considered a great Jedi is just courting disaster. And as a Sith guy, I'm a fan of it, but as a human being who only likes my evil to be fictional, I think it's a mistake to think that.
Hold on. I did find someone who does talk about this. Jedi Master Sora Bulk. He was a Weequay Jedi who ended up turning to the dark side, and he is quoted as saying in Dark Horse Clone Wars Volume 1.
I love that you're using a paper reference manual, classic analog. I dig it.
I was long fascinated by it. Our work on Vapad. He's talking to Mace Windu. My own secret researches into it fascinated me more. So he worked with Mace on this style, and he developed his own side of it. So
and it ended poorly for him, and that's the I didn't remember his name, but that's my only understanding of the Vapad. I don't know why it's really called a lightsaber form, because we only ever see one outside of that Dark Horse comic book. To my knowledge, we only know of one character who uses it. I don't think it's a lightsaber form. It may just call it, Windu Fu.
Yeah.
So, and this is compounded for me. It's compounded by the frustration that nobody seems to be able to agree on, as I mentioned earlier, on what a great Jedi is. Do they use the dark side, or do they just question the Council's methods? Because I think, while the Jedi are a fairly strict and regimented order, I don't think they're forbidden from questioning the Council. Qui-Gon is most commonly pointed at by folks that I talk with online or in convention stuff as, oh, well, he's a great Jedi because he questioned the Council's orders. Well, who didn't? I mean, and again, if anybody can join the club, why is it a club?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think the idea, the reason why they call him the Gray Jedi is simply because from what I've seen, they tend to lean more towards being benevolent and helping other people out while still kind of walking that fine line of doing the wrong things for the right reasons. I think another example, while it's not canon anymore, but Starkiller is a great example of that, because he starts off as a Sith apprentice. Mm-hmm. He's trained in all these dark side ways, but then he helps form the rebellion. Keep in mind, this is not how canon is now.
Right. The Nintendo Wii is not necessarily canon, but it's a good story.
Xbox 360, but thank you. But he then uses those skills, those same dark side skills and fighting techniques to do things that no other Force user had done before. For example, using he used Force lightning in a way to shield himself from blaster bolt fire and other forms of attack that sapped strength from his opponents, especially like stormtroopers, for example, or droids. And then he could supercharge the power cells in his lightsabers to do some really phenomenal things.
Just depending on what buttons he pressed.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I like Starkiller. I played through The Force Unleashed twice, but it's difficult he's a difficult example because he is essentially the protagonist of a first-person shooter, and his reason for existence is to sell video games. Ergo, he must get more and more powerful as his story progresses. Otherwise, people don't play the game.
But I mean, I'm using it less about how powerful he is and more about the fact that he did walk that line between having all that hate in his heart for Vader and for Palpatine, but at the same time channeling it into something productive and something that was meant to save lives.
Which brings us back to the nomenclature. Do you think Starkiller would ever have described himself as a Jedi with a neat color modifier?
Probably not a Jedi.
He's not a Jedi.
No, he's not a Jedi by any means. Although he does talk about when he in the meditation sequence that he does midpoint through that first game, where he's meditating and he's struggling with it, and he flat out says, "I've never been a Jedi before."
Yeah,
as if he was.
I think that's where the argument takes root, is that Jedi is not synonymous with Force user. There are many Force users who can and do use the light side and the dark side with varying degrees of success and to varying degrees of intensity. Many of them fall to the dark side, but I don't think very many of them are practicing Jedi who attend classes in the Order every day.
So do you think a lot of it has to do with just the fact that for certain people, the term Jedi is something, and this is like in real life when they use the term Gray Jedi, they use the term Jedi because it's a term that people know. Yes. It's a term that people can, they hear Jedi, they know, it's lightsaber. So because the term,
but they defeat their own argument by using the wrong word for it.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe it's just the fact that the term Force user doesn't seem as cool.
No, exactly, and that's what I mean. It is a fan fiction term, and this isn't verified. I haven't found concrete evidence of this, but I believe that the concept of Gray Jedi began in KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, where you can find an item which is called Gray Jedi robes, and that's confusing. Are the robes gray? Are they Jedi robes which are colored gray, or are they robes of a Gray Jedi? And does that not also conjure forth the concept of a brown Jedi? Because there are brown Jedi robes, and I think it's a cool concept.
Don't see color.
Don't get me wrong. I agree that it is a cool concept, and I think we've all seen the picture of the guy with like the Destiny style face mask and the yellow lightsabers and all that. It's a cool concept, but it goes against everything we understand about the Force. And the argument comes down to some kid on Facebook saying there's no such thing as light and dark, with a concept that Darth Sidious and Grandmaster Yoda both disagree with.
And I think on that I agree with you, because I mean that's like saying that there's no such thing as objective good and objective evil. And then and then it's like, well, how do you explain this horrible travesty over here that someone enacted?
Right.
Yeah.
No, a concept, Garrett, you may be, I'm sure you're familiar with this as well, but there's a concept in writing that no one is the villain of their own story.
Right.
Nobody takes action because this is the wrong thing to do. Arguably, Emperor Palpatine is the exception to that, because all he wants to do is just like kill everybody just to punish somebody for things that didn't even happen to him.
Yeah, he's evil for the sake of evil.
Exactly. I mean, there's some mustache twirling that happens with the Emperor Palpatine, but that's neither here nor there. But I think it's just a matter of people who want, as I let in, people who want to be Jedi because it's a cool concept. Inarguably, the Jedi are an awesome concept, but they also want to use the dark side. And, we end up with Mace Windu, who is indisputably an awesome character. Samuel Jackson notwithstanding, even if somebody else played him. I mean, Dave Chappelle could play him. He'd still be an awesome character. But I think we have to see him as an exception. I don't think the dark side is a tool that can be used effectively by almost anyone. It's like when people, I don't know, there is an established norm within the Star Wars story that the end does not justify the means. That in fact the means are the point. And Yoda, as soon as we meet Yoda, 3.5 minutes after he's on screen, he's telling Luke the dangers of the dark side. And I think perhaps, obviously it didn't exist when he first said it, but I can retcon that story to think Yoda saw he knows what happened to Mace Windu. And he knows that Vapad did not save Mace Windu. The only thing Vapad ultimately did was convince people 40 years later that Mace Windu won that fight, despite the fact that he is dead. But it's not. I can't get past it. It just comes down to a fundamental failure to understand the nature of the dark side and the nature of the Jedi. Call it something else.
So then that begs my question: what would be a better title for these individuals who walk that line?
Quitters. No, I don't know. There's smarter people than me can come up with a cool name for it, and it's shorthand. And again, as I said, my opinion is not objectively right. I feel strongly about it.
It seems like eventually these characters that we see that whether they leave the Order, whether that be Ahsoka leaving the Jedi and leaving the Order, going off on her own, or Asajj, getting kicked out and kind of seemingly going back towards. Eventually, they seem to.
I'm sorry, Asajj kicked out of what?
Not kicked out, but just kind of
orphaned.
But then picked up by trained as a Sith assassin, and then kind of abandoned by Dooku.
I love Asajj Ventress. I think we touched on this recently, but Asajj Ventress
these characters tend to move one way or the other. They tend to eventually move towards. They're either going to move towards the light side or towards the dark side.
Mm-hmm. In RPG terms, Asajj Ventress has multi-class to almost every major class in the game. She has been a Jedi, a Sith, a Night Sister, a pirate, and a bounty hunter.
She's chaotic neutral.
She's done everything but be a Twi'lek dancer.
She doesn't have the head tails for it.
Those kids just a hat,
Yeah.
But I think I agree that it is a cool concept. I think it is poorly presented. And to be told again, condescendingly and at some volume, that the joke I make is like, okay, guys, we're going to flip a coin to see what order where the next book is going to be about. And the Jedi say heads. And the Gray Jedi say, the Force has more than two sides. We are the edge between. And Sith say, tails, I guess. Like the coin's never going to land on the edge. Like, we're at war. Pick a side. And it's just a nomenclature. I would say that it is difficult for a character to use both light and dark and survive it. Now, I think anybody who uses light and dark is going to end up on the dark side. But they're not going to end up a Sith. But they're certainly not going to be a Jedi.
All right. I will say this, and I've ran into this a lot of times where someone will put a post on Facebook, and they'll just make a comment about the Gray Jedi. Nothing about, just like, oh, it's a cool concept, and immediately it's like this.
I pile on them.
Hey, it's like, oh, this is stupid. This is dumb. And it's just like the person is just sitting there like, I just think it's. I mean, why are you attacking me? It just, I do think that there is this overwhelming, like you even mentioned the word Gray Jedi. It's just like, bruh.
The analogy I use is like, well, I'm a vegan, but I do like a steak now and then, or like I do CrossFit, but I don't really like working out. Like
I've heard that. I have heard
we
that
know
before.
what a Jedi is, and it is someone who does not use the dark side. Yeah. And again, smarter people than me could come up with a better term, and I get that it's shorthand for a cool term. And when you say Gray Jedi, I think that's why people jump on it. They know what you mean, and they don't think that's a thing. But how many vegan quesadillas have we seen? Like a lot of people like things that are not really a thing. So I can respect folks who like it. Yeah. I don't like being told that I am a bad fan or don't understand things because
well, and I think you could say the same thing for people who when someone says, because I've seen this personally where someone says, yeah, I like the idea of it. And then they say the same thing that you say, but just the opposite, where they say, well, it's not canon. That's stupid. You're not a real fan. Because Gray Jedi aren't canon, so you're stupid because you like Gray Jedi.
I've been guilty of coming down hard on people for that sort of thing. And in the past, things got heated. And I like to think that in most discussions, I am even capable of apologizing online in a Facebook argument. Yeah. Like, you know what? That was too much and I'm wrong. And I apologize for coming across rough. Yeah. But it's just when I'm being told by a child that I don't understand the lore of the Force. Like I make the joke, like we see a lot. There is no light without darkness. There is no darkness without light. That's objectively not true. And something that I've said in character, like when I'm doing like role play or talking to people as Palpatine at conventions, the darkness is the absence of effort. You've heard the phrase, all that needs to happen for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Good men create light. The dark was here first. And when the light goes out, the dark is there. The dark doesn't have to do anything to be present. The dark just has to wait for the light to go out. And that is the mindset behind the dark side. You cannot use the dark side for good purposes. No matter how much you do, the dark side is playing the long game. And sooner or later, the good purposes that you are pursuing will fail and bring you down. And the dark side will win ultimately. You can't touch it. Anakin.
Well, we are coming up.
Yeah, sorry. I just a coda to that. Anakin tried it. He specifically talks about how he wants to, like, he'll defeat the empire from within and bring peace to the galaxy and all that stuff. It's still his galaxy. He's already using the language of the dark side. Yeah. So it's simply something that we have seen time and again in canon and in the extended universe. It's not something that can be done.
Very true.
Well, I'm done. If you want any more, put a quarter in. But that's all I got.
All right. We're coming up on our time. This has been a good, not as heated or as I thought it was going to. I'm glad it wasn't. But yeah, it's of course, give us your information, what you think, your opinions on this. We are welcome to that, of course. We're always willing to hear what you have to say. We wrap up here. We got some a little bit of news coming up, but we'll get that at the end. Garrett, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my fantasy book series, The Archives of St. Ran. I have 5 books out there, and I don't post about them as often as I should because, like any other writer, I'm terrible at marketing. But I also do a show called The Right Way on YouTube. You can find that one by going to the link that's scrolling across the screen right now, youtube.com/c/GKJ Publishing. And on that show, I talk about book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. So that's currently what I've been working on, and season 7 wraps up at the end of season 6 wraps up at the end of July.
All right. As for Brian, what about yourself? Where can they find you? Where can people find you?
You can find me and some of my other Star Wars friends posting a curated collection of Sith archives, art and lectures and philosophy on the Sith Library and Archives on Facebook. And I very infrequently post on Instagram and Twitter X as Carosis, as you see there.
All right. As for us right here, of course, you can get a hold of us. Our email is at warthestars1@gmail.com. That is also our Twitter handle. Instagram is at War of the Stars. And I finally have our YouTube. The YouTube name, it is at WSW Child is the Star Wars, our YouTube handle now. I know it says at the War of the Stars 9510. I changed that. That is going to be the home of Star Wars Through the Eyes of a Child, which is my YouTube channel show with my daughter Lily, where we are going through the Star Wars Clone Wars in chronological order. We just finished up with the series of what was the last one we just did? Let me find out here in a second because I cannot remember. Oh, it is Defenders of Peace. Sorry about that. Defenders of Peace, where they're on the planet with the little pacifist monkey people. But yeah, so that's always fun. If you want to support the show, you can go to kofi.com /War of the Stars. Give us a cup of coffee there, if you will. Or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop, spreadshirt.com/shop/War of the Stars, and get the cool War of the Stars merch. We're, of course, a part of GNN, Geek News Now, on YouTube and Spotify. It is the official, we are on YouTube, the official home on YouTube of War of the Stars. And you can also find us on, just search War of the Stars on Spotify. If you you can find us in GNN Spotify or on our own Spotify. Yeah, we're just all over the place. Just search War of the Stars, you'll find us somewhere. All right. As for the kind of news, kind of information, we are going to be starting a schedule each month, so you'll kind of get an idea of at least the basic idea of the topics we're going to be starting with. The first Wednesday, we a little behind the scenes. We record on Mondays. Show comes out on Wednesdays. So the first Wednesday of every month will be a lore video. We'll be talking about Star Wars lore, history, whether it does with the Jedi, the Sith, the Rebellion, whatever it has to do. We'll be doing a video on that. The second Wednesday of the month will be a character profile, and this month we will be talking about all things Uncle Palps. We're talking about Sheev Palpatine, aka the Emperor, aka Darth Sidious, whatever you want to call him. We'll be talking about Uncle Papa Palps. Yes. Week 3 will be co-host choice. So
that can be
one
fun.
of us,
it can be incredibly dangerous.
handsome. Yes. And then week 4, we are going to be starting this month going through in order, the chronological order, the movies, starting with episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where I'll be talking about it, breaking it down, looking at things that we might have missed the first 5,000 times that we've watched these movies. And we'll be watching all 11 of them, maybe 12. I don't think we decided if we're going to be doing the Clone Wars movie or not.
I think we should make a decision right here and now.
Do we do the Clone Wars movie?
I think if it came out in the theaters, let's call it a movie.
Yep.
All right. Okay. We will be watching the Clone Wars. So we'll be doing all 12 theatrical release movies that are in the Star Wars canon, starting with episode 1 and ending with, of course, episode 9 this time next year.
Yeah, we'll be done with this next year. So buckle up, folks.
I'm never more than a month away from watching one of those movies anyway. I'm excited.
And then, of course, any month there's a fifth, or there is a 5th week in a month, a 5th Monday, that will be mailbag time. So get your questions ready, email us, send us Facebook messages, and and we'll answer questions on anytime there's a 5th week. With that being said, as always, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
I am one with the Force. The Force is with me.
I still need a tag.
Nanu.